Can you explain clearly your stance on stop and frisk?
The tactic of stop and frisk, observing someone, a police officer has a reasonable suspicion, imminently is about to commit a crime or just has committed a crime, has to be part of policing, obviously. Otherwise they can't do their job. That's been constitutionally upheld, and obviously it's an important part of policing, and we want them to do that. However, I believe that the overwhelming number of stops that are of people that did nothing wrong is an abject failure. Every moment a police officer is having a conversation with someone who did not do anything wrong, an invalid stop, for want of a better phrase, makes us all less safe. First, because that police officer is not he's not out catching a bad guy. Secondly, because they're having an interaction with an innocent person who will be less likely to cooperate with the police in the future. And also third, on a purely practical level, has led to a dramatic increase in the number of lawsuits against police officers because they're getting into conflicts with people who didn't do anything wrong. So I've proposed three things. Two of them are a specific thing that I do, and one is a general practice. The specific things are, first of all, I was the first to advocate in this race even before the court came out and ruled for it, for lapel cameras for police officers. I think it helps document stops, that'll help with training, it'll protect police officers, and also provide evidence of wrongdoing when needed. It'll put bad guys behind bars, but also make sure that innocent people aren't being stopped. Secondly, I would update our CompStat data dumps that we do so often to not only include the 7 index crimes, the FBI crimes, but also the numbers of 250s, the number of stops that have been made, with where they're happening, how many of them are resulting in actual summonses or arrests or anything else. I should point out, during the trial, when information became public, the almost overnight reaction of the administration was to dramatically reduce those numbers of stops. Crime kept going down. So we have to keep that environment of transparency going on all year round. But third is more of a global tactic, and by the way, I included all of these in the speech that I gave at the Fortune Foundation, is to go away from this notion of dropping dragnets over communities and go much more to something that's been called focused deterrence, where you put police officers on the ground for extended period of time in a communal setting. You don't send them in there alone just to arrest people. You send them in just to be neighbors. You send them in on foot, on bike. You get them out of their RMP, you get them out of their cars, and you also send them in there with other community services around the idea that we have some knowledge of where the hot spots are, and rather than try to use stop and frisk as a deterrent, we use stop and frisk only to actually stop and frisk those people who we now have gathered information. And the example I always use is when I visited public housing and slept over, as many of my colleagues did, we had an opportunity to talk to my host, and I asked her a little bit. I said, listen, tell me a little bit about the conditions here in the project. She says, listen, crime is very high here. And I said, do you know who the drug dealers are? And she said, yeah, it's Lenny and 9L. His name wasn't really Lenny, and that wasn't really the address, but the idea being that the information is there if it can be mined in a more surgical way.